Sanbonani. Welcome everyone to the Spreading the Word podcast series, where we chat to wonderful authors and illustrators of books for young minds. My name is Nomakhwezi, and the thing I love most about books is that you get to travel to the most amazing places without even having to move your feet. All you have to do is turn the page of a book. Tabanga nje. Here, we get to meet all the amazing people behind those magical pages in our favorite books. Today we meet Christopher Lloyd, a historian and children's book author who wrote his first book in 2006 called What on Earth Happened?, which has now been translated into 15 languages. In 2010, Lloyd founded the children's nonfiction publishing house called What on Earth Publishing, along with illustrator Andy Forshaw. Together, they help young people and adults learn about the wonderful world we live in and how to respect it better. This led to a series of world history timeline Wallbooks, the Britannica all-new children's encyclopedia, and recently, It's Up to Us, in collaboration with the Prince of Wales and 33 illustrators from all around the world. And exciting news for you, you can enter the It's Up to Us challenge if you like to get creative. You get the chance to write, paint, or draw the future that you would like to see. One that puts nature first. The best will be shared on Prince Charles' social media feed. Check out the link over here and in the video description to enter the It's Up to Us challenge. You can head on over to these places to get Christopher's books. Have fun meeting Christopher Lloyd. Hi, Chris. Welcome to today's podcast interview. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Kwezi. It's lovely to be here.
Lovely to have you. I will just start from, I think, what might be the very beginning. I'm curious to know, what is the first book that you remember, or the first type of book that you remember stood out to you and that you wanted to go back to again and again? Why did it stand out to you?
Well, that's a really good question. And I remember as a child having an encyclopedia called the Hamlin Book of Why. And I don't know if you know, Hamlin was a great publisher of encyclopedias back, I don't know, well, I'm 54. So I suppose we're going back sort of 45, 50 years ago. There was this book just called the Book of Why, and all it did was it just answered incredible questions that you always thought, oh, why is the sky blue? I mean, why isn't it green? Why isn't it yellow? You know, why do elephants have big long trunks? I mean, how bizarre is that? I mean, why do I have two nostrils? I mean, just everything. It just appealed to me because I suppose. As a child, like most children, I was born with a natural curiosity, and the world around me was much more fascinating than anything you can make up. And I've been kind of trying to pursue that thought ever since, to be honest. But that Book of Why, we've just published a Britannica Book of Why, which is a really exciting, return for me. The idea that we can, come back to that genre and try and with modern design and really vibrant pages in a way perhaps that's moved on since the 70s when I was a child. We can now publish these again for children today.
Yeah, no, that's exciting, and it segues beautifully into my next question, because you, in your books, you tap into this curiosity that lives most alive in young minds, and is about the world we live in. It's about the realities that we exist in that are more exciting than we sometimes give them credit for. And for instance, your book, Absolutely Everything. What is it like awakening this curiosity within yourself each time you turn a question into a new book?
Well, you see, young people, I think, are naturally hardwired to ask questions about things that adults might think are ordinary or even boring or, taken for granted. And to be honest, that's a really sad state of affairs for anybody, whatever age, to think of anything as ordinary or anything as boring or to take anything for granted, because when you live your life that way, you're cutting yourself out from a whole lot of experience which your brain wants to tap into. Children have this zest and this joy of life, which is why adults like being with children, why it's so uplifting. I'm speaking about, young children here before they get, onto their phones and before they start becoming teenagers, and then that's not quite being a child in the same way. But I'm really talking about children up to the age of maybe about 12 or before puberty, when really you have a sense of self, you have a personality, but you want to find out where you fit in. You want to find out why the world is the way it is. And I try and set myself a mindset where I go to bed every day, every night, and I wake up in the morning, and the first thought I think to myself is, wow, I've survived another night. And that sets me up to think, what am I going to find out today? Every day is a bonus. Every breath is a bonus. And with that mindset, nothing is ever boring. And that's the mindset I try and have when I'm thinking about a book. I'm thinking about, how can I make this as if I'm seeing something for the first time? Because then I find myself connecting with a child in the same wavelength that they have. Right. And it's not patronizing or dumbing down. It's the opposite. It's kind of reaching out and connecting with a child on the same frequency that they're on. And if our books can do that, like the idea of telling a child the whole history of everything from the beginning of time to the present day in a single book would seem crazy, right? But here it is. And what's more, it's got a nice big font and there are lots of pictures. It's not difficult to read, but I'm going to tell you the story, and together we're going to discover incredible things about space and about animals and about trees, and then about these strange creatures that walk on 2 feet, and about the Stone Ages and about ancient civilizations. And then we're going to talk about technology and about nothing is unavailable to the curious child's mind, as long as you are on the same frequency and you're looking at everything like you're seeing it for the first time. And that's really what I try to do.
Yeah, no, my grandfather used to always say, umuntu ufunda aze afe, which means a person learns until they die. If you stop learning, you should stop living. So learning is life. Right. So it's beautiful. Thank you. And I mean, people often assume you were saying it's not patronizing the way you interact or the way we should interact with young people. People often assume that one needs to oversimplify or dumb down when writing for young people. And that's kind of ridiculous, because I find I've been dumbfounded many a times by questions that younger people have asked me. I'm supposedly an adult, we'll see. But they're capable of so many complex emotions and thoughts because they haven't had the filters of the world that we adopt over time, which I admire. And I'm curious to know what conversations you get into, what experience you have writing and interacting with those awesome people, those young people when in the space.
Well, you see, I don't really think of myself as an author. I think of myself as a storyteller. And, I'm not in any way limited to the medium of a book. I tend to give birth to my stories in print because I was trained as a journalist. And so the paper and printed medium is very natural for me. But then I get off my backside and I go touring and I go to schools and I go to festivals and I go to museums and I go to conferences and I try and turn my books into stories that can be delivered in a lecture or a workshop that might last anything from 30 minutes to 2 hours. It depends. And I try and make them flexible. And I use different storytelling techniques. The one I'm most famous for, I suppose, is reviving a technique that was pioneered in ancient Greece, where you use everyday objects as mnemonics, as a way of connecting key moments of a story to something that's just sitting around the home. And that way you can remember it. So I will talk about the incredible story about how water is thought to have arrived on the planet Earth on a giant bombardment of comets, some of them more than 100 miles wide from outer space over 4 billion years ago, and which is incredible when you think about it. But I would just use a little bottle of water in my coat, and I have a coat of many pockets, and the kids come and pick the pockets to see what's inside, and I'll try and link everyday things to incredible stories, just to try to sort of give them something where they don't need to take notes in order to be able to remember what I've said. They just have to be able to remember the objects. And that's the way that people did their storytelling in ancient Greece, because they didn't have pens and paper. And in many ways, we think writing is the most important skill you can give a child. And in many ways it is, because it's fantastic for communicating at a distance, for being able to pass things from one generation to another. But there's also a very dark side to writing, which is that we can outsource our memories. And if we constantly write lists instead of remembering ourselves, then we're not using our brains to their full potential. And in this way, I never want children to be writing notes when I'm giving a talk. I just want them to pay attention. I want them to engage with the story through the everyday objects. All they have to do is remember the objects, and then they will be able to remember the stories. So storytelling is to me is a sort of organic art form that stretches well beyond the book. And I like to think of theatre. I like to think of course, it's very much two-way when you're in a school. For example, I was doing a talk I did a book on sport once. And one of the moments I was talking about was when Alan Shepard, who was one of the 12 men to have walked on the moon — there's never been a woman yet, as you probably know. Yeah. Hopefully there will be soon. Still waiting. He took a 7-iron and he did a golf shot on the moon. And I was explaining this, and we were talking about gravity to the kids and saying, well, do you think the ball would have gone further or not as far as if he was on the Earth? And we worked out that it would have gone further because the moon is smaller, there's less gravity. And there was one girl in the back of the room, and she put up her hand. She said, Chris, she said, did he go and pick it up? And I thought, what a brilliant question. I have no idea. Yeah. Do you think that golf ball is still there on the moon? Or did he actually take the trouble to go and pick it up and bring it back with him? And we went to find out, and it's still there. In fact, there were 2 golf balls on the moon. He took 2 shots. He never picked up the golf balls, and they're there for someone to discover and bring back to the planet. Right. Yes, see? So this is a two-way storytelling kind of experience, and that's what gives me a tremendous thrill. So I'm hoping when I come to South Africa, some of the kids will have some great questions, and I'm hoping I don't know the answer, because then we can find out.
You go find out. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. My mother's a storyteller, so that comes straight home.
Yeah.
And it's so fun to see the interaction, because it takes away the distance and you come right up close and you get to find out stuff yourself all together.
Yeah, absolutely, you do.
So much more fun. Your book, It's Up to Us, is one of those books that not only allows young people to learn why nature is part of us, but more importantly, that we are nature. And if we don't love nature, we can't really love ourselves or each other properly. But it also allows different generations to converse and relearn and remember what it means to be caring to the world we exist in, that we are part of. And so I'm curious to know how that's been received between adults and children. And also your printing process was interesting for me. If you could just touch on that as well.
Yes. So the book was inspired by an idea by Prince Charles, actually, and he's been involved with this whole project from the start. In fact, he's just recorded a lovely video, which I'm going to send you, which he's just made for Earth Day. And today is Earth Day. So it's very appropriate that we're talking about. Here is the book here. And we published it as a way of trying to give children the opportunity to understand how nature works without people in a balanced, harmonious way, how people have upset the balance of nature, what that means for the planet, and finally, a new set of rules, which Prince Charles has called the Terra Carta, in the tradition of great big treaties like Magna Carta, which was the establishment of the rule of law, to say that, kings can't be despots and do anything they like. They have to obey the law. In this way, these new set of rules is that we can't just make as many profits as we want in our businesses and our companies. We need to put the planet first for future generations. And his concept of Terra Carta was very much aimed at businesses. And when I read about it, I felt a calling to want to make it into a children's book so that children could have the conversation with adults. Because it doesn't matter how many times you talk to a 35, 40, 45, 50-year-old about putting nature first. If they're focused on their business, if they're focused, on their next results, quarterly results, they're not necessarily going to be able or want to put nature first. But if they go home and they read a bedtime story and their child says, hey, Dad, why don't we have solar panels? Or why are we eating food that's come halfway around the world? Yeah. Or what are we doing about making sure we don't create plastic waste? That really hits an adult in the heart. It's the child having expectations of their parents as role models, and their parents aren't actually living up to that if they think about it hard enough. And we need to make older people, adults, accountable to their children by giving children the ammunition to be able to converse and tell a story. Yeah. And that's the way I hope these generations can connect, not in an aggressive way, not in a way that says, you're to blame or your ancestors are to blame or that isn't the point. The point is to open the conversation. Mm-hmm. And a 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old is beautifully positioned to be able to activate the adults in their lives. Maybe their teachers, maybe their schools should have solar panels, but they don't. Maybe the children can help raise money if cost is an issue. That way the message about needing to change our habits can be amplified so much more quickly and so much more effectively through the engagement of younger people. So that's what I'm hoping to do with this book. That's what we're trying to do. We've opened a new challenge just today where Prince Charles is asking young people to write, draw, or paint a picture of the future they would like to see that puts nature first. And you can go online and upload your picture, and then Prince Charles will share the best entries or make a selection of them on his social media channels. So it's quite an exciting way, again, of thinking beyond the book and engaging with people to put their own imaginations into practice and through their own handiwork to communicate the importance of putting nature first. Young people instinctively feel part of nature. Yeah. When we get grown up, we feel apart from nature, which is very different because we're in our cars, we're in our trains, we're in our offices, we're worrying about money, we're not thinking about nature. But young people can remind us we're part of nature. Yeah. And that is what's going to make all the difference if we're going to make this change and rise up to the challenge of climate change.
Oh man, I'm so happy. Okay, and then I still have this entire huge section in my bookshelf of children's books because I don't think the child in me is ever going to go away. I'm curious to know, do you still like children's books as well?
Yeah, of course I do. I mean, I like to read children's books because, I get my inspiration. I have no monopoly of ideas at all. I'm just doing my own little thing from my own little perspective. And by looking at other people's work, whether it's artwork, what was really rewarding about It's Up to Us is that we didn't use one illustrator. We ended up using a different illustrator for every page. So there are 33 different artists, and they're from all around the world. So and then I got a chance to interview them, and we've got these videos which you can get by. There's a little QR code on the back of the book, and you can see these artist videos. And talking to the illustrators was fantastic because they work on lots of books, but just hearing their different perspectives and seeing their artwork tell the story through a different cultural lens. It was absolutely inspiring. And actually, we're doing another book now. I'm not writing it, but my little company is publishing it, called Longest Shortest Day. It's pictures of the solstice from around the world. So what we're doing is using different illustrators as the sun rises on the 21st of June over different parts of the world. At every stopping point, it's a different illustrator telling the story of what people are up to. And again, I think that also plays into this really important question of authenticity, which I think is something, that's on our minds more than it used to be. And I feel that, to paint or draw with authenticity, you need to have the experience of the place that you're painting and drawing. And similarly, when you're writing. And I think that really matters in terms of trying to make the connection and allow the empathy to flow between cultures, which is, key for all of us.
Yeah. And in closing, I think I'm going to ask a very typical question, but a very important question.
Mhm.
There are young people watching this now. There are people watching this now and going, I want to turn my question into a book as well. It's possible. Let's find the answers together. Clearly, if someone is doing it, I can do it too. What might you say to those people? Is there anything you might?
Well, publishing a book is kind of, in some ways easier than ever because, you can go onto websites where you can make a book. And what you have to think about is the relation. You need to really think about who the book is for. If it's for a 4-year-old or an 8-year-old or a 14-year-old or a 20-year-old, or is it, and that's important because you need to understand who you're talking to. And I think there are different ways of telling stories for different ages. And obviously for young people, the images lead the story and the words support the images. And therefore you don't want to try and say everything in words. You want the images to say things that the images are better at saying perhaps than words. And therefore the connection with the artist or the photographer, if you're using photography and the words, is very, very important. And usually you have to work as a team. It's not the same person illustrating as writing. Sometimes it is, but often it isn't. So therefore the collaboration, the collaborative dimension, and the success of the book will be partly dependent on that collaboration, I think. And so working as a team, finding somebody you really enjoy spending time with, who's good at something you're not. So if you're good at writing, find somebody who's good at illustrating. If you're good at painting, find somebody who's good at writing and designing. And then together, see if you can, come up with a story, give birth to it, with lots of rough sketches. And then you can use computers and other things like that to turn it into a real book and give it to people as a physical printout. I think that's important because books really are meant to be picked up and read. They're not just something that should be looked at on a screen. And then, of course, think about, how do I turn this into a talk? How do I turn it into a lecture? How can I turn it into a movie? How can I make this into a drama? How can I, all these things. Don't think of it as just being a book. It's a story, and you're the storyteller. And so, that way we can express our humanity to each other in ways that will always inspire.
Oh, thank you so much for those words and for this conversation in general. It's so lovely chatting to you.
Great pleasure, Kwezi, and I can't wait to come over to South Africa and see you and to see hopefully lots of kids in the schools and parents and everybody else at the festivals there. I really, really am looking forward to it. So
we
thank
look
you.
forward to having you.
I hope you enjoyed that interview about books and reading and children. It's the most important thing to be interviewed about. And I would just like to add my ending to this series of podcasts. It's very hard for me to contemplate a world without books. Impossible, really, but books are so much part of life and so much part of learning and so much part of the day and such fun that I couldn't do without them, for one. But far too many children have to. They live in a world of television where books are served up as work, where they read them to pass a test, and there are 10 questions to endure before they move on and forget the book entirely. We need to change that. Thankfully, there are many individuals and organizations working to do just that. And I would like to say thank you to the Franschhoek Literary Festival for their outreach program in reading in schools in Franschhoek Valley, which they've been doing for 9 years now. And the publishers and the sponsors who've made the Franschhoek Festival and also the children's part of it, Franschhoek Reading, happen. And to the writers and illustrators who put so much effort into creating books that they hope will interest and affect children and make them able to understand a better part of their world. It's beyond important. It's critical that our children read, and we can't stop trying to make that happen. We have to bring books to children and children to books. Thank you, all of you.
We at the Franschhoek Literary Festival hope you enjoyed that interview. Remember, you can get the books at all of these places. And don't forget to go ahead and check out some of the other interviews with some really awesome authors and illustrators. Maybe one of these days I'll be chatting to some of you. So all the best as you go make magic with a pen, some colors, and a page. Have fun.